move to 10.2, help remind me yesterday what we talked about. Okay, so we talked about integers and how integers are positive and negative whole numbers. We talked about how to identify them in a situation with keywords. What are some keywords for positive?
Increase, gain, above, earn, up.
Okay, and I told you to write in 2 words for positive. You remember what those 2 words were?
Credit and positive.
Credit and
deposit.
Okay? And then for your negative words, what are some examples of some of your negative words, Taylor? Withdrawal. What's some other negative words? Debt. Decrease, lose. All those good things. We talked about 0 as well. What was special about 0?
0 is neither negative nor positive.
It's neither negative nor positive. It's neutral. Okay? In order for things to be positive, it has to be in front of 0. And for things to be negative, it has to be behind 0. Then we talked about a number's opposite. The opposite of 4 is negative 4. The opposite of negative 3 would be positive 3. We also talked about the opposite of the opposite. Did we talk about that with you guys? The opposite of the opposite? Okay. So the opposite of the opposite is kind of like a double negative. Okay. So if I have 4, okay, the opposite of 4 would be negative 4. What's the opposite of negative 4? 4. So basically you're just right back to where you started. So the opposite of the opposite is just itself. Okay? So that's pretty much all we did, and we graphed them and all that good stuff. So here we're going to start talking about comparing integers, knowing which one's greater than the other, and then putting them in order from least to greatest. Okay? One easy concept, if you'll memorize and understand, this is where I want you to highlight, is that it says on a horizontal number line, numbers to the left are less, which is what we talked about when we were talking about inequalities, that left is less. If the number further to the left is going to be the less number, and the number to the right are going to be greater. I would highlight that so that I remember that left is less, right is greater. That's on a horizontal number line. If I'm talking about a vertical number line, those that run up and down, the one that's below are less, and the ones that are above are greater. So like if you had a thermometer, y'all ever seen like an actual thermometer that measures the temperature? The higher up it goes, the hotter it is. The lower down it goes, the colder it gets. Okay, same concept there. Or if you were to measure somebody, if I were to take out a measuring tape and I were to measure, say, Micah compared to Augusta, okay, Micah is going to be a little bit shorter right now than Augusta, right? Her point would be taller than Micah's. Well, you probably shouldn't pick on Micah because he's not here. We love Micah, though.
Hi, Micah.
Hi, Micah.
Micah.
We'll see if he notices.
Micah.
We'll know if he watched it by
Yeah,
he brings it up. Yeah. Okay. He's going to grow taller than a lot of us, though. All right, so we want to compare 1 and negative 3. And the best way to compare these is by graphing them on a number line and knowing which one is further to the left and which one's further to the right. So we can take our highlighters and we can plot positive 1 and negative 3. So this is the left side and this is the right side. And if I want to know which one is less, which one's further to the left? Negative 3. So when we're comparing, when we're being told to compare, they want us to use the greater than, less than, greater than, equal to signs. Okay, so if I have 1 and I have negative 3, we decided that 1 was greater than negative 3. But if you're like me, I freeze up sometimes and I forget the less than greater than sign. I showed you how you can use your left hand to make the less than sign, right? Okay. Another trick that I use a lot is I draw dots. So I draw 2 dots by the bigger number and 1 dot by the smaller number. And then when I connect the dots, the sign is always going in the correct direction because 2 is bigger than 1. So 2 dots go by the bigger number, 1 dot goes by the smaller number. So we would read this as 1 is greater than -3. All right. And then I give us some examples to do with a vertical number line. They want us to compare -4 and -2. So here's -4 and here's -2. Do you see how -4 is lower than -2? That means -4, is that going to be smaller or greater than -2? Smaller, because its height is smaller. Okay? So if I'm comparing -4 to -2, I put 2 dots by the bigger number, 1 dot by the smaller number. I connect my dots, and there's my inequality sign. Because that whole alligator mouth that they taught y'all always confused me. Like, I never, am I the only one who never understood the alligator mouth?
Because the alligator mouth is about either way.
Exactly, and that always confused me. So I like the dots. I like put 2 dots by the big number, 1 dot by the small number, connect the dots. Because I can do that. Alright. Then we had -1 and -5. -1, -5. If I could write my negatives correctly. -1, -5. -1, is it bigger or smaller? Bigger because it's higher up, right? It's above. So 2 dots by the bigger number, 1 dot by the smaller number. Connect my dots. Alright, we good? Alright. Turn the page. Should be pretty easy. Alright, now we're going to work on putting numbers in order from least to greatest. Another strategy to use to do this is by putting it on the number line and then starting from left and going to the right, because left is less. Left is less. Left is
Less.
maybe at some point you'll get a seep in there. Alright, so we've got -5, 0, 2, -2, and 3. We're going to put those on the number line. So I've got -5, 0, 2, -2, and 3. The beauty about using a number line is a number line, the numbers are already in order. So you just have to start over here on the left and work your way to the right because left is less.
Can you just put, like, 5 over like
All right.
-2?
So what's the first number all the way to the left that we have plotted? Not just 5. -5. Then I have -2. Then I have 0. And then I have 2. And then I have 3.
Like up there it says -5 and 0 and 2.
I plotted them in the order that they gave me so I didn't miss any numbers.
So it doesn't matter.
No, you just plot them, and then once they're plotted, they're already in order from least to greatest for you. So that's using a horizontal number line. You can do the same thing with a vertical number line. We can still come over here and we can plot -5, 0, -2, +2, and 3. But if I'm graphing from least to greatest, Am I going to start at the top or at the bottom?
The bottom.
The bottom, because the least is going to be lower. And it would give it me the same order that the horizontal, if I start at the bottom down here at the lower level, -5, -2, 0, 2, and 3. And I just work my way up. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Uh-huh. Okay, flip it over. The last thing they're going to have you do is reason through integers. They're going to give you a statement, and you're going to have to, from that statement, figure out sometimes the biggest possible number, the smallest possible number. You're going to have to figure out, it's kind of like those mystery numbers that y'all see sometimes are like, the sum of this number is 24, and yada, 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 yada. Okay. The example they give us here says a number is greater than -4, but less than 0. What is the greatest possible integer value of this number? So they give you some answer options, and here's some like notes, key ways to do it. It says the number must be to the right of -4 and to the left of 0 on a horizontal number line. It's basically between, if it has to be greater than -4 and less than 0, it's between -4 and 0. So I would kind of like section it off. What's the greatest number between -4 and 0 here?
-1.
Remember, the greatest number is going to be to the right, okay? The less number is going to be to the left. Greater is to the right. So which is the furthest right number between these two? -1. Does -5 even fall between these two numbers? No. And 3 definitely doesn't. So your number lines are going to be like your friends. All right. And then we have some practice here where they want us to compare the integers. So we have -7 and 7. You could look at a number line to compare, but which is going, -7, is it smaller or greater than 7?
Smaller.
Smaller because it's further to the left on the number line. So it gets 1 dot and 7 gets 2 dots. Connect the dots and it makes your sum. Uh-huh. 3 and -1, which one's greater?
3.
3, so 2 dots, 1 dot. Boom. Y'all like the dot?
Mhm.
-2, -4. That's kind of when they're both negative, it gets me a little confused. So I might would come over here. Here's -2. Here's -4. Which one's greater? -2.
If you think about it, it's kind of the one that's closer to 0. Like
It is.
2 is less.
Yeah, it's closer to 0. Mm-hmm. All right, -5 and 0. -5, smaller or bigger?
Smaller.
-5 is smaller. 0 is bigger. -8 and -7. Here's -7. Here's -8. 8 is smaller. 7 is bigger.
Three.
3 is bigger. Good. 4 is smaller. Mm-hmm. Then they have put the numbers in order from least to greatest. I put a number line here for you so that you could use it if you wanted to help you figure that out. Or you can draw a number line to figure out the order. But if you look at number 7, you have 3, -6, 6, 9, and -9. We're going from least to greatest. What's the least number, the number that's going to be furthest to the left here? -9. Alright. Now what's going to be the smallest number? Or furthest to the left?
-6.
-6. Then what? 3, 6, 9. If it's hard to visualize and see that, I would put it on a number line. Like number 8, here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So when you picture the negatives, you just switch.
It's the opposite of what you would think. And I could come over here and I could graph 5, -2, -4, -7, and 3, and then it's already in order for me. Which one's my smallest?
So
-7,
then
then
-4,
-4.
then 2, then 5.
But sometimes you're going to get some big numbers, and it's going to be difficult to draw a huge number line.
So you go backwards and then switch up.
So your negatives, you almost have to think of it backwards. So like if I have -7 and -8, if they were positive, 8 would be bigger, right? But because they're negatives, it's like opposites. So like 7 would be bigger. So if you see a negative, you got to think about it backwards.
So you pretty much just want to
Right. All right, so number 9. What's your smallest number here? Which number's going to be furthest to the left?
-40.
-40. Then -10.
And then 10, then 30, then 40.
And then it's just back to normal, right? All right, you do number 10 real quick. All right, what's our smallest number here?
-28.
-28.
And then -22. And then -12. Then 8. And then 25.
Beautiful. All right, number 11 is kind of like some of those puzzles you got to think about. It says a number is between -3 and -12. Between -3 and -12. So it's between here and here. Okay, on the number line. What is the least possible integer value of this number?
-11.
-11. Beautiful. What could be the greatest possible number?
-4.
Yeah.
Well, what's the closest number to -3?
-4.
-4. So that's going to be the greatest possible number. Very good job. All right. I'm not going to have us do the back of the extra practice just yet. We might do that later, but not right now.
Can we do that?
If you want to, you can. This is what you're responsible for today. Yesterday, you should have gotten pretty much done with the O1 through 4 for the most part. I've added 7 and 8, which those were pretty easy. Somebody in last class was able to do 07 in less than a minute, so all the way up to 100. So there's that. Make sure you get that done. If you need help, look at your notes first. If your notes don't tell you, ask a partner. If they can't tell you, then ask me. Okay? All right.